can't really hear it, then how's it going, guys? So, yeah, today we're going to talk about some stuff, some cool stuff. So, we've got a couple, we're really going to talk about mainly Andor and Severance today. Um, just two sci fi shows that I watched this year that I've been kind of impressed by. And I haven't really talked about either of these shows to any, like, at any great length yet. How to fix this? Yeah, there we go. Haven't really talked about either one at any great length yet, so that's what this stream is for. I started watching both shows back when they were first airing. So season one of both shows, it was several years ago, but yeah. Season two of both just came out this year, and I'm excited to talk about it, especially Andor. Andor season two I thought was really good, and Severance season two I thought was good, but Severance season two is definitely like a transition season where it's setting a bunch of stuff up. So I felt like Severance season two a lot. Not too much went down, and it left kind of on a big cliffhanger, but we'll get to that. How is everyone else doing? Is everyone doing good? It's cool now that StreamYard has a feature where you can put the chat on screen. So I hope that's not too distracting. And yeah, I'm a bit late talking about Andor and Severance too because I'm always late, but here we go. I don't usually talk about TV shows unless they're related to like a book series that I've been covering. But yeah. Um, Someone says angry Amazon canceled my series Wheel of Time. Okay. Wheel of Time. Oh, I'm sorry for you. I never got into the Wheel of Time Amazon TV show, but yeah. Oh, also, this stream will have spoilers for Andor season one and season two, and Severance season one and season two. So we're going to be talking about like things that happen, themes, and ideas. So certain things will be spoiled. Someone says, "How is your AI friend thing? You mean Trolleon?" Trolleon went back into outer space quite a while ago. Have you watched Pantheon? I have not watched Pantheon. Yeah, so some of you might know that I'm not like the biggest um, Star Wars fan. I never have been. I didn't watch like all the Star Wars stuff till like a few years ago. And I wasn't like super, I'm still not super into Star Wars stuff in general. Like I like it sometimes. I'm not really a fan of any of the Disney shows, right? I'm not really a big fan of them. I've seen basically all of them. I'm not really like, oh, I love the Disney shows. And Andor has been different for me. Someone says, "Do you not like Foundation?" I'm a book reader. I do like the Foundation books. Um, the show, I watched season one of the show, and I didn't care as much for the show because I thought it was giving something different from the books. I have heard that it gets better as it goes on, but I haven't really been there yet. I haven't been back to Foundation yet, but it might be. We might be revisiting that at some point. I also wanted to note too before we get started because I have a bunch of notes about Severance and Andor. Before we get started, I wanted to say that for anyone that has questions about the comic book, The Lie Behind the Star, um, you can check out the Indiegogo page, click on the update section, and it has all the updates that we've been doing. So as most of you know, if you've been following, we had this book would have been out so long ago if like God, I keep getting screwed over by artists, but it's fine. We had to completely change our main artist and basically start the book from scratch. That happened at the beginning of the year, and we should have some big updates to show next month. So please check out the Indiegogo page for anybody that's been asking questions about that. And I think that's it. Oh, yep, I did put out a video today. I put out a video on Solaris, Stanislaw Lim. So check that out if you have not seen it. I think it's a pretty good video. Classic science fiction book. But yeah, without further ado, let's just move on and get right into Andor. I'll just start with like a recap of season one and two, just like the bullet points that I wrote down. So Season one opens up, right? And you have Andor kills two corporate security officers on Ferrix, and this essentially prompts a manhunt, leading to his induction into the rebellion. Then you have Luthen, played by Stellan Skarsgård. He recruits Cassian for a high stakes mission on Aldani, I think it's pronounced. So Cassian joins the rebel cell to steal the Imperial payroll, leading to a successful but costly operation. Cassian is arrested, and this is the best part of the season one, in my opinion, is when Cassian gets arrested and sent to the labor camp on Narkina 5, I think it was pronounced. I have it in my notes. Um, and it eventually leads to a prison break, and that was really cool. And then also in the show, you have the Mon Mothma stuff where she's secretly funding the rebellion while navigating the dangerous political landscape. And then at the end of season one, you have the funeral of Cassian's mother that ignites rebellion on Ferrix. So she's kind of the symbol of the rebellion beginning. And then season two has a totally different structure. I had heard things like where they were planning on doing more seasons, but it got condensed into season two. I don't know if that's true or not, but I enjoyed the structure of season two. It was done in three-part episodes. Basically, they released 3 episodes per week. It was 12 episodes total, and each three-parter was like a year or so, right? Um, so it starts with Cassian. He's basically matured, and he's a committed rebel spy. Um, you have the introduction of K2 Esso, who appears in Rogue One, the robot guy. But the central piece in season two of Andor, and we're going to get into all of this stuff. This is just the overview. We're going to get into all of this stuff more in just a second. But the central piece in Andor season two, which this is what really made me fall in love with the show. I liked season one, even though it was a little slow in the beginning. But when we get to the Gorman stuff in season two, that is when the show really, really picks up. Is my audio loud enough? I see someone saying they can't hear. So just let me know if my audio is loud enough because I can increase the volume at any moment. Um, so the Gorman stuff, right? So there's a massacre because the empires, it can be louder. Let's turn it up. Is that better? Is that better? That should be better, right? That should be better. Yeah, I was turning. Yeah, I think that should be better, right? Okay, gotta wait for the chat to catch up with what I'm saying. Okay, okay, better, 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 better. All right. So the Gorman massacre, and you have the Empire's. You see the role of propaganda, and you have the Empire suppression of gore. Um, and you also have in this season Mon Mothma's public denouncement of the Empire, which leads to this whole big scene that happens. And also in season two, you have more scenes with Luthen and Clea. The Severance discussion is happening a little bit. We're just going over a slight recap of Andor season one before we get to the main thing. Um, More Luthen and Clea stuff, which ultimately leads to Luthen's death after he's captured, but not before he uncovers a crucial bit of information, and that is that the Empire is building a super weapon, right? So the season ends. Now this knowledge is out there, whether the rebels take it or not. Is James in the chat? We need some moderator action happening. Maybe I should take the chat off of the screen because I think it's leading to some shenanigans happening. Um, okay. Okay, let's not disrupt the stream too much. So the season ends with Cassian fully integrated into the Rebel Alliance, and the final moment we have the information that's come out that the Empire is building a super weapon, and whether the rebels take the information is up to them or not. And right at the end, you have the revelation that Bix actually had Cassian's child, and she took it away from the rebellion as a way to prevent the Empire. No, as a way to prevent the kid from having to experience the horrors of war and going through rebellion. We are going to be right back in just a second. All right, so that's just like a recap of Andor. So, yeah, okay. So let's get to more meat, right? So I wasn't even planning on watching Andor at first. I thought it was just going to be a spin-off about a random guy from Rogue One, right? So this is like Rogue One is like a cool movie, but I didn't think, the character Cassian was that deep. But then I finally gave the show a shot, right? And it totally blew me away. Now, like I said, it starts off as a little slow. There's a lot going on. But once you get into it, it's so good. It totally blew me away. And it's not just about Cassian, it's about how people get radicalized. It's about how empires maintain control. And it's about how a rebellion actually starts, right? So this is a layered political and emotional show, right? So every character feels real and messy in a way that other Star Wars things don't, right? It's deeper. It went way deeper into the Star Wars world than I expected. And it's honestly, in my opinion, the most thoughtful thing the franchise has ever done. So, Andor, at its core, is about life under a fascist system. And it's about how that kind of power works, how it achieves goals, how it how it works and how it achieves its goals and the methods that it uses. So the main goal of the Empire in Andor is, spoiler alert, as I mentioned earlier, is the creation of the Death Star. And everybody knows what the Death Star is if you've seen Star Wars, massive super weapon. But they never talk about how it got made or what the process was like to make that and how they made it basically in secret. And what I like about this show is instead of big space battles or dealing with the Sith, dealing with the Jedi, it focuses on how the Empire keeps people in line through fear, control, and propaganda, most importantly. And it's about how everyday rules slowly crush resistance. The Empire attempts to control the narrative at all times. They attempt to control truth at all times. And that is the key here. And that is how that's like watching Andor, especially season 2. I'm like, this is just the real world that we're living in right now. It was really interesting to see. Right. And you see this, especially with the propaganda and the controlling of the narrative, right? You see this very, very clearly in places like Ferrix in season 1, where like even small acts of defiance feel dangerous, right? And then in the prison arc on Narkina 5, it's not just the guards and the actual physical structure of the prison that traps people. It's like the feeling that the system is too big to fight, right? That's how fascism works. It's not always through force, but through making people feel like they have no choice. The prison, in my opinion, I thought this especially the second time that I watched season 1, the prison is this microcosm of life at large under the Empire's rule. Like, why even fight against the Empire when it is so powerful that you know, when it's so powerful, the prison floor will kill you if you step out of line, literally. Just like the Empire does away with those who dissent. So propaganda plays a big role in how the Empire keeps its power. And that is important because that is exactly how real fascist authoritarian governments work. And if you're not interested in this kind of political science fiction, then I think you might not be as interested in Andor as other science fiction stuff. But Andor for me is a lot more like Dune than other science fiction stuff because it's about power and how it really works. The Empire controls the narrative. They twist the truth. They use fear to make people comply. Right? You see this most succinctly, most succinctly in season 2 and the narrative around Gorman. And I said earlier, this is my favorite part of the show, right? The way they frame the people of Gore as elitist and self-serving, like that they're just defiant against the Empire for no good reason. When actually, when actually it's all a distraction because the Empire wants to mine precious resources, like resources that are necessary. We learned for the construction of the Death Star. We learned that early on in season 2, that the reason they're going to Gore is because they need some sort of resource that's necessary for the construction of the Death Star. But this resource, extracting it, will likely jeopardize the ecosystem, the environment of the planet Gorman, right? And the Empire is very smart, and they know how to maintain control and to control the narrative. Because instead of just doing this out in the open and exposing themselves as the clear bad guys, they do it a lot more subtly. You know, they create distractions. They reframe the narrative to make the people of the Empire see Gorman as the people of Gore as deserving of the Empire's wrath, right? And I can't understate how cool this part of the show is because the Empire is, you know, in a way like they're operating like the Bene Gesserit, right? The Bene Gesserit would do this. I mean, the Bene Gesserit isn't a destructive, authoritarian, fascist force like the Empire is, but in Dune, the Bene Gesserit do manipulate the narrative. They do control truth. That is a major way of holding on to power. Truth is power, right? So to me, all of this was the highlight of the show. And the way side characters, the way all the characters are involved in all this is really interesting. So I thought Deidre was a very interesting character, and I'm glad that it all turned out the way it did for Deidre and Cyril, because Deidre, and that's the blonde, what was she, agent, cop? I don't know. That she really shows how fascism hides behind the idea of order and security using logic to justify cruelty, right? It's also calculated in her mind. She's ISB, yeah, that's what she was. It's also calculated in her mind. It's like it's logic to justify cruelty. And then Cyril, I think, is an example of how an authoritarian society will radicalize even just average people against their peers and make them revere the mechanisms that actually oppress them all, which is so interesting. Ah, God, it's just a reflection of the real world. So the entire show, Cyril is mad. I do not agree, Peter Griffin. No, I feel like Cyril got justice, and I'll explain exactly why I think that. The entire show, he's mad at Andor. He hates this man that he never met. For what? For what reason? Because Andor defended himself in the first episode against two state-sanctioned criminals. Right? And instead of letting this go like he was told to, or even acknowledging, that this was a failure of the very system that he serves, that brought about the circumstances that led to the death of these two state sanctioned criminals in the first place, instead of acknowledging that, he becomes hell bent on tracking down Andor, and this is his way of continuing to serve the system. But when it all goes wrong, the system, of course, discards him. And then in this moment, he's got another chance to re examine it all, but instead, no, he places all of his anger on Andor, and he just lets that anger just like build inside of him for the entire show. For the entire show, right? And what's more interesting is, I think, in the end, when Cyril is becoming, like right at the end when the Gorman massacre is happening, right? And he's becoming disillusioned with the Empire, I think. And he's starting to realize, you just really see his face and his reaction. There's no concrete that he's actually becoming disillusioned, but you see it in his face, I think. And he's realizing that the Empire has manipulated this entire situation, that Daedra has been a part of it this entire time, obviously. But even with that knowledge, all around, knocking around in his mind, when he sees Andor in that last moment, this is such a good scene. All that rage that Cyril had kept inside of him for years just bubbles back to the surface, and once again, Andor becomes the subject of his just anger. He takes all of the frustration towards Daedra, towards the Empire, everything, and it's redirected onto Andor. And, Andor kind of gets his kind of Thanos moment where Cyril is like, you ruined my life. And he's like, I don't even know who you are. And it was so fitting. It was such a great moment, because this is the moment where Cyril dies kind of unceremoniously. And then I think a lot of people I saw like didn't like this death. And I've seen people be like, justice for Cyril. But I thought the death made a lot of sense, because this was a character that Cyril was a character that never fully got it. And I think that in this moment, realizing that this man that has been his greatest enemy in his mind doesn't even know who he is, and hasn't even been considering him or anything that he's been doing this entire time, that coupled with the knowledge of what has really occurred on Gorman, this massacre that's been orchestrated, I think something finally clicked in Cyril's mind right in that moment. And it seems super brutal, but just to me that character ends there, that he doesn't get to move on from that point. Because this is what's great about Andor. This is what is so great about this show. Cyril wasn't totally evil. He wasn't like a Sith. Like but he still directly helped perpetuate this system, and his actions led to this massacre on Gorman, right? He would ultimately his actions would ultimately help lead to the creation of the Death Star and the loss of countless lives. So, there is some moral ambiguity here, right? There's a lot of greatness in this show. There's a lot of greatness in this show, and that is the strength of the show. And on that same talking point, I think that Daedra's end was fitting too. So her last act, in the end, is to attempt to help the Empire, even when they've locked her up, when they're about to take everything from her. Even then, she's still like, I'm going to help the Empire in this last act of mine. And ultimately, she's still discarded. Ultimately, what's his name? Partagaz is still discarded. So what it's saying is that this authoritarian, where's the camera? This authoritarian government, it doesn't care about individuals. It doesn't care about individuals, even those that serve it. When you are no longer useful, you will be eliminated, or somehow removed from the equation, right? So, just wow. Like the character arcs in season 2, just wow, really impressive. I know I got some super chats, so let me just look at those before we move on real quick. Thanks so much, Paul Hull, for becoming a member. Thanks, Innator Corp, for becoming a member. Mike Hunt says, if you're going to wear a vest, I'd recommend button suspenders. They are far better than belts. Once you try it, you'll never go back. Thanks, Mike Hunt, for the recommendation. DJP, Quinn, any new series coming? We love long form video. Thank you for all the hard work. Always new stuff coming on Quinn's ideas. And thank you guys so much. If you've been enjoying the stream, please hit the like button. Um, and yeah, it really just helps out everything. Oh, let me just get a sip of water. So everyone here, let me just talk to the chat real quick. Has everyone here seen Andor? Have you seen Andor, or are you just the type of person that doesn't mind spoilers? And if you have seen Andor, what are your thoughts on the show? We're not done. I'm not even halfway done with my notes. We got more to get into. But what are your thoughts on the show? Do you like it? Do you love it? Are you just kind of meh? Is it kind of not your thing? Because I've seen people be like, oh, I'm not going to watch Andor because I'm not into Star Wars. And I get it, because I've never been a giant Star Wars person either. But Andor is definitely different. JFK Shooter says, I liked it except the wedding. We're going to get into that wedding sequence a lot, but I didn't dislike it, but I thought it was interesting. Mon Mothma, such an interesting character in this show. Someone says, not seen it yet, but I don't mind the spoilers. Okay. Okay. So let's keep going. Right, so we were talking about how there is a lot of moral grayness in Andor in this show. There's a lot of moral grayness and ambiguity in the show. And it's not, I feel like it's across the board. So the rebels are also gray. They're not like just like all good guys either. And that is also like that's also like a major strength of the show. So Luthen, probably my favorite character. Luthen and Mon Mothma, probably my favorite two characters. Luthen is this is the Stellan Skarsgård character, in case you're bad with names. But he's the perfect example of a character that's just, he's a perfect example of what I'm talking about with the greatness, because he's a character that's built from all of these contradictions, right? So Luthen fights for freedom through deception, through manipulation, through bloodshed, and how do I say this? I think the character, he represents the moral compromises of a revolution, right? Let's just put it that way, right? Because dismantling a system that is as pervasive and as cruel as the Empire is going to require methods that are often just as brutal. So by the time of Luke Skywalker, by the time you have Luke Skywalker stepping into the picture, blowing up Death Stars and wielding lightsabers, people like Luthen have already done most of the dirty work, and set Luke up to be where he is. And what makes Luthen so compelling is how he embraces what he is. He embraces, the contradictions of it all. He's not like the bright-eyed rebels clinging to idealism, right? That doesn't exist in this show. I mean, it might exist to some extent, but that is not who Luthen is, right? He has already forfeited his soul, his entire soul to the cause. And that scene where he talks about everything that he's sacrificed, how he sacrificed calm, kindness, kinship, love. You really see the toll that this double life has taken on him. Like he has really sacrificed everything, and none of this would be possible without him. And yet, by the end of this, nobody will remember his name. That is true sacrifice, right? He doesn't get to live in immortality as a hero like Luke and like all the others. He sacrificed even his name. Like, he won't even be remembered fondly by the other people in the rebellion. And you see that in the show. The other people in the rebellion kind of hate him because he has took that upon himself to just sacrifice everything and to really, really do what it takes, right? He's not the hero in the traditional sense, but he's this necessary evil that clears the path for, the Lukes of the world. And, he knows what his role is. He knows that he will be forgotten or remembered not fondly. He knows. But he knows that the goal is more important than his legacy. He knows that destroying the Empire is more important than the legacy of Luthen. And that is just powerful. Like, the characterization is stunning. Like, you can't deny that the characterization here is just immaculate. It is so well written. Like, that's I know I keep saying this, but that's the highlight of the show. The characters are so well put together, and they're so layered and so well defined. I loved Luthen as I loved Stellan Skarsgård as Luthen. You know what you have where you have Cyril and Deidre, they worship the system. And then Luthen, he understands it intimately. He understands the system intimately. And that is what makes him so dangerous to the system, because he uses everything that he knows about the Empire, right? He uses its predictability, its obsession with control against it. And he knows that to do so, that he has to mimic the ruthlessness of the Empire oftentimes. So he's gonna let people die. He's gonna burn allies. He's going to let entire operations go down in flames because he's protecting something that's way, way larger than this friend, than this ally. He's protecting the whole entire movement. And, like I said, he does it without recognition, without redemption, right? And that's the tragedy. The tragedy is that Luthen sees the world. He sees it for what it is. He stripped it with all the bullshit stripped away. Luthen sees the world for what it really is, and he's like, this is what it takes. And he knows that. Oh, this is key. This is key. This is key. Luthen knows that truth isn't going to save anybody. Right? Luthen knows that truth isn't going to save anybody. That only action is going to save anybody. Right? Because people don't actually care about the truth, because the Empire can manipulate the truth. And that's what we see this season, is the manipulation of the narrative, the manipulation of truth. You got Cyril's mom watching Imperial News. But the thing about action is that action has a cost. Um, Action has a cost. Action has consequence. So where you have, Cyril, who's deluded into thinking that the system is going to reward him, or like Deidre, who's deluded into thinking that the system is going to somehow reward her. Luthen has the position. He knows that this system isn't going to reward anything. It's only going to consume. The Empire does not reward. The Empire consumes. It eats you. It sucks you dry. It drains your bone marrow. That's what it does. And so that's why Luthen isn't loyal to the rebellion either, right? He's loyal to the idea of freedom. He's loyal. He's loyal to the idea of freedom, right? I loved it. What more could I say? I loved Luthen. I loved Luthen. And I mentioned Mon Mothma and how much I loved the characterization of Mon Mothma. I think, how many actors have played Mon Mothma now? Like 3 different actors have played her. And this is absolutely the best characterization of the character ever. I don't even know how that is in question. Uh, like, so Mon Mothma's whole deal is that she's trying to, so two actors. So her whole deal is that she's trying to, and this is part of what makes her. This is what makes every scene that Mon Mothma is in so intense and so like nail biting, because she is trying to fight the system from the inside, from the inside, but it's slowly destroying her. Right? She's stuck in this political world where she has to smile and play nice while secretly funding a rebellion. And then everything that she's doing is being watched, and she knows that everything she's doing is being watched. And she's not out there with a gun, or with a laser sword, but she's carrying just as much weight, if not more so. I feel like it would be more stressful to be in the political situation that Mon Mothma is in, where like, oh, it's so incremental, every single thing that you're doing, and at any point guards could just come and round you up and like take you somewhere to be killed. So I think I would rather be in the woods with a blaster, like evading stormtroopers, than where she is. Because, like I said, every decision that she makes could blow up everything. It could blow up the entire rebellion. It could blow up her entire family. That's another thing. She has a family too, so it's not. Oh God, the stakes are impossibly high. Like that's the thing about Andor. Not only are the stakes high on an individual basis for every single character, the stakes are high just in general because the Empire is producing a world-killing weapon. And never more has the Death Star seemed like more of an imminent threat. Like we've seen in movies like the Death Star uh, blow up planets, and it's like, oh yeah, it's blowing up a planet, but never more have I felt the gravity of it than in Andor. Never more have I felt the gravity of it than in Andor, where it's like, wow, okay, now it really feels real. Now I see what is at stake because I feel like before I don't feel like I had the grounded personal connection to the planets that are being blown up. I don't have the grounded personal connection to the people. The world doesn't feel realized in the same way. But what Andor did in building the world just worked so well that like right after I finished Andor season 2, I went right into Rogue One, and it made Rogue One better than it had ever been just by the fact that I watched Andor before. Like Andor sets up Rogue One so well that it works really well. Like in fact, Andor is so good that at the end of Rogue One, and I can't even think of her name, the girl from Rogue One, who's technically the main character, at the end of Rogue One, when she's giving the speech and she's like, "Come on, guys, we can do that," it almost seems weird that this character is saying that when like I've just watched 2 seasons and you haven't even been involved and these people have been fighting the rebellion this entire time. I'm like, who are you? Yes, Jin. Yes, but it kind of made that seem it kind of made that scene feel a little bit off because she like you just popped up and we've been here fighting. But it added so much to the movie and I was like genuinely like just elated by how much it added to the whole thing and I almost want to go back and just watch every single Star Wars thing with everything that I saw in Andor in mind, right? So yeah. But back to Mon Mothma too, right? So what really hits about that character too is like she is also sacrificing not as much as Luthen's character, but she has a lot that she has to give up, right? So that scene where she basically has to sell her own daughter off into a marriage, right? That's pretty brutal, right? Someone mentioned that they didn't like the wedding scene, but I got the point of like the wedding scene and the dance. Like this woman is under a lot of stress right now. Dancing historically has been a way for humans to relieve stress. It'll happen. It happened in the past. It happens now. It'll happen in the future. People are always gonna dance. It's a thing that people do. Um, and it's just the moment of her like trying to like basically she just basically had to approve somebody dying, right? Someone that she's known for years that she just basically had to approve the assassination of, right? So it's like I get I didn't mind the wedding sequence or the dance sequence. I thought it worked um, because it shows how much it shows how people even when they're trying to do good, when it's this complex, you're going to get pulled into dark choices, right? She hates it, but she does it because the cause needs it. It's another sacrifice that's being made, right? She hasn't lost her morals, but she does have to compromise. The fight forces the compromise, right? So, oh God, what am I missing? Just other highlights. Nimic's monologue, freaking amazing. Nimic's monologue was freaking amazing, right? And I go back and I listen to it, and I'm just like, speaking directly to me. That should be played like in the morning at schools instead of like the Pledge of Allegiance. Just play, Nimic's monologue, right? It's so good. Let me see. I have a list of characters that I enjoyed. Oh, yeah, Kino, the Andy Serkis character. That was really interesting because inside of the prison, he kind of represents the person inside of an authoritarian society that's just like, keep your head down, don't push, don't fight, just keep your head down because you're never going to get anywhere, just don't fight the system because the system is too big to fight. And I thought that character was an interesting representation of that, and he's basically in the end forced to fight. And I still don't think you ever get to know what becomes of this character, because like when they escape the prison, he can't swim. So does he jump? Does he get killed? Does he go back into the prison? You still don't know. I don't think. I don't think it was revealed because, like I said, I've only seen season two once, and there's a lot of subtleties in the show. Like I watched season one twice to go back and pick stuff up. Um, yeah, and I mentioned Partagas, how he's also discarded by the system in the end. Oh, brutal! It's like, why even serve the Empire? It's like I would just join the rebellion by default. They're gonna make you kill yourself if you screw up anyway. Like, holy crap. So, incredible show. And notice I've barely talked about Cassie and Andor at all in this show, because this show is not about Cassie and Andor. That's the thing. It's almost like Andor is a misnomer. I almost feel like the show could have been called something else. I don't even know what it could be called, but it almost feels like Andor is the wrong name for the show, because I think a lot of people might not watch because it's titled Andor, because that's, like I said in the beginning, that was a reason where I was like, oh, Andor, like who's Andor? The guy from Rogue One that I don't, that dies in the movie and is never mentioned again. I'm like, what? I don't even know what this is. Rogue Zero. That's funny. Rogue Zero, someone says. Um, yeah, so I'm just like, I don't even care about. I'm just like, I don't care about this. But that's not what the show is at all. So it's like, it's almost like I feel like it was a missed opportunity not to name it something else. Um, but amazing show. I think those were all my thoughts on Andor. I think I went through the bullet points that I had to talk about. Like, I'm gonna look at the chat now. What are some of you guys' thoughts on Andor if you've watched it? Favorite moments, favorite characters. Someone says Cassian is kind of the common thread. Oh, that's a good point, I suppose. Even if he's a soldier in the bigger event, that's a good way to frame things. Cassian is kind of a common thread that connects everything that's happening in the show, right? He's there on Ferrix. He's there on Star Wars planet names. He's there on the Rebel Pyramid planet. He's on Coruscant. He's all over the place, interacting with all of the characters at different times. So that's a good way to frame it. That makes a lot of sense, actually. I agree. Very, very, very talented actor, Diego. Everyone in this was talented. Oh, how could I forget? Oh, this is really funny. Yeah, Clea. Clea is really interesting. What was really funny about Clea is that when I was watching this, I looked over and I was like, I bet she's like a clone of Princess Leia or something. That was my insane crackpot theory for season one of Andor until it was disproven. Yavin 4 was the name of that planet. Until it was disproven in season two, I was like, my crackpot theory is that Clea, whose name just it sounds exactly like Leia but with a K. I was like, oh, she's a clone of Leia because like this actress looks so much like Carrie Fisher, and she's got her hair done like Carrie Fisher was in the movie. And I'm just like, this is so intentional. This is a troll. Like the casting department, the naming department, all colluded in controlling in trolling us with this character Clea, because I'm just like, either she's gonna take off her wig and be like, not take off her wig. Either she's gonna pop out and be like, I'm secretly Leia. I knew the ages didn't match. She couldn't have been Leia because Leia that would have made Leia too old. But I thought, oh, she's like a clone somehow because clones are a thing in Star Wars. And I'm like, no, that's too crazy for a show like Andor. And this show wouldn't do that type of thing. But she could play Leia, right? But it's almost like she can't play Leia now because they've already cast her as Clea. Oh, and that's another thing too. When watching Rogue One again, it's like, damn, Clea's missing. Clea was noticeably missing from Rogue One, and I know that Rogue One was made earlier and that she's an invented character for Andor. But if you're watching them like straight, like right, like consensu- cons- con where if you're watching them in a sequence, I can't speak right now. If you're watching them in a sequence, then it's like it's noticeable that she's gone. I'm like, oh wow, that was sad. Okay, yeah. So yeah, cool character. Um, who else? Anybody else gets honorable mentions from me? K2SO, epic. Yeah. Mon Mothma's husband sucked. I hated that guy. I hated that guy. Hated that guy. Yeah, Cyril. I called Cyril SpongeBob the entire time that I was watching it. I was like SpongeBob because it's just like he's got that like I'm ready. I'm just gonna go to my job. Yeah, that guy sucked. Krennic. It's weird. Like to me, Krennic looked younger in this than he did in Rogue One. It's like he actually aged backwards. That was super. Like he looked really good in this, and I was like, wow, like you've been, you. It looks like you've gotten healthier since Rogue One, which that was really interesting. So yeah, whatever his like aging routine is, he's doing really good. Speaking of aging, I'm turning 31 tomorrow, which is crazy, right? So my birthday is tomorrow, and I'm turning 31. Like I'm like fully in the 30s, which is crazy. Yeah. So yeah, what else can I say? Andor is the shit. And if you and if you have not given Andor a try, please do so. If you are into political science fiction, if you are into learning about how power works, like if you're into like a real look into how power works in the real world, Andor is your thing. Go for it. Check it out. We're gonna move on to Severance now, which is the other awesome science fiction show that I've kind of been obsessed with for a while. And I've talked about Severance here and there. I was on a Pete Pepper stream where we talked about Severance. That was a lot of fun. You can check that out. I'll link that in the description when I finish the stream. But yeah, Severance is so good, right? If you have not seen Severance, this is another one where you just need to watch it. You just need to just shut up, go to Apple TV, watch it. However you need to watch it, you just need to do it. She goes Severance. You need to do it. Um, it's so good. And season one is still my favorite. I didn't like season two as much because season two is like a transition season, but we'll get into all of that. It's still good. It's still one of the best shows on television. And we'll just do like a quick, before we get into the nitty gritty of it, we'll just do like a quick recap season one, season two, before we get into like all my notes. So I just got a few bullet points here, just the major events. So season one, you got Mark being promoted to department head after PD's sudden departure. You got PD reuniting with Mark's Audi outside of Lumen, and this kind of leads to this rabbit hole. It reveals that the severance procedure can be reversed, introduces the idea of reintegration. Um, you got the character Heli R in season one who has joined macro data refinement. And then, like, what exactly is macro data refinement? We don't know. It's like this weird thing they do involving these scary numbers. She is immediately rejecting the system. She tries to escape several times. Like, she tries to request exit, but and he keeps denying it. Um, these are just like bullet points as to things that happen in season one. So Mark's Audi is he shows he's very sad about something. He's it's like the death of his wife Gemma, presumably. Like there's something going on with him. At some point in season one, Petey dies of complications of reintegration. So you know that the process of recombining the innies with the outies is dangerous. Season one, the macro data refinement team bonds. They start to question like the work they do and what Lumen actually wants. This is a major moment happens when Irving discovers the O&D team, right? And he starts to form this like secret alliance, like secret affair with like Bert starts to build. And then the big twist of season one is that Helly is actually Helena Egan on the outside. So she's the daughter of Lumen's founder, and you know it's all like PR, right? That's why she's there, even though the innie doesn't realize it. Um, and then at the end of season nine, they do the overtime protocol, which allows them to temporarily wake up in the outside world and kind of possess their outies bodies for a little bit. And then right in the end of season one, Mark tells his sister she's alive because he realizes that Gemma, Mark as his wife, who he thought was dead on the outside, is actually alive. It's a whole thing. If you haven't seen the show, I know you're super confused by this recap, but this is just for people that did watch the show and just want a quick recap. So we learn at the end of season one that his wife is still alive and that she's actually imprisoned by Lumen for some reason, and we still don't know by the end of season two why that happens. So then we get to season two. Um, the macro data data refinement team has been replaced at first, but then they come back and Gemma is alive on the inside still. Um, we get introduced to this thing that they're working on called Cold Harbor, and I got to tell you, I still don't know what Cold Harbor is. I still don't fully get what Cold Harbor is. I know they say what it is at the end, but it doesn't totally click. And I'm like, maybe at the end it'll make more sense, right? So just skipping to the end because I feel like this season is very slow and I feel like not that much ultimately happens. So by the end of the show, what you have is Gemma getting out of the severed floor, and she's been like in the bottom for like a really long time, and they've been like doing the Cold Harbor experiments on her, like fragmenting her consciousness. I don't know exactly what the purpose is, but they've been doing that. She escapes, but then Mark's innie decides to stay with Helly, which is this was a very dramatic moment, huge cliffhanger. I feel like this was even like a bigger cliffhanger than season one, right? And for me personally, and I hope no one thinks that I'm like crapping on it, but I season two the cliffhanger was not as satisfying as the season one cliffhanger. Season two in general was not as satisfying as season one. I felt that season two what could have been condensed. I felt that season two could have been closer to 7 episodes. I felt that a lot of it was filler and a lot of it could have been cut out. It felt at times like they were just like, let's add in fluff. Like there was that whole episode where what's her name, where we get Harmony's past, right? And I'm like, that could have been 10 minutes in a different episode, right? But instead, it's like a shorter, full episode, and I'm like, we did not need this entire thing. All right, but anyway, let's get into my notes about Severance as a whole, right? Because I haven't even really explained anything about Severance. Let's really get into it. Someone says, loving seeing your coverage of the Zeely sequence. Thanks so much. Thanks so much. Okay. Because I bet if you haven't seen Severance, you have no idea what I'm talking about right now. So let's get into it. So Severance, like I said, is a really interesting show. And it is about these people who have undergone a procedure that splits their consciousness. So their work self only exists at work and has no idea who they are on the outside, and vice versa. Which, that might sound simple, but that leads, oh, it's insane. So it starts off as this eerie corporate satire, right? But then as the show goes on, it definitely gradually turns into this deeper mystery about like, identity and, free will and, just like the psychological cost of separating yourself from your own life. And it's definitely like a metaphor for how people might go to these like soulless jobs where they're a different person at work versus what they are on the outside. So that's definitely a big part of the metaphor. I'll tell you this, I went into Severance completely blind. I hadn't seen a trailer. I did not read the synopsis. I just kind of heard the name floating around, and I figured I'd give it a shot. And honestly, that made the whole experience even better because from the first few minutes, you can feel something is off. You don't know what it is. It doesn't hit you it's not like you're hit with a lot of exposition. It just kind of drops you into this cold, this cold white collar purgatory, and it trusts you to just sit in that unease. You just got to sit in the unease and just accept what you're seeing, and try and figure out what you're seeing. And I love the show for that, because it respects its audience and it doesn't think the audience is stupid. So that's awesome. Um, Oh, and okay, here's cool. This is a cool thing because some people have debated, I've seen, whether Severance is even science fiction. And as I've always say, or as I've been saying a lot recently since I've been studying the history of science fiction, because I'm still working on my documentary, and the going is slow, but the going is going. But all that's required for something to be science fiction is a novum, right? So you need that single thing that changes the rules of the world. So in the case of Severance, the novum is the severance procedure itself. So it's just this one piece of imaginary technology, and then suddenly you're dealing with this huge ethical and emotional and existential kind of ripple effect that leads to so much occurring. It leads to so much that happens based off of that just alone. So right, so science fiction doesn't need spaceships or like space travel. It just need like all that's really required for science fiction is a what if, right? And then the definition can kind of stretch. There's a huge section in my science fiction video that I'm working on where we're trying to define what science fiction actually is, and this is something that's been debated for a long time. But I think Severance pretty squarely falls in line with science fiction because it's that what if that makes everything just feel like alien and but still familiar at the same time. And definitely check out the podcast episode that I did over on my Cosmic Chronicles chapter, my Cosmic Chronicles podcast on that channel on the history of science fiction, because there's an hour-long podcast that I did on the history of science fiction, and I talk about this, and I talk about trying to define science fiction and how actually hard it is. You cannot just pull up the Google definition of science fiction and think this is what science fiction is, because that is not going to be the case for everything that is considered science fiction. And the more science fiction that you encounter and the more science fiction that you read, you realize that the definition is a lot broader than most people actually think and realize. And also, I didn't realize, AK, what is up? Thank you so much for joining, and thank you all my moderators, Jackie, AK, James. Thank you all for being here and keeping the chat nice. And yeah, okay. So yeah, let's see, where was I? Yeah, I just think the tone of the show is so unique, right? It's got this sterile but weirdly surreal feeling. I've heard, and maybe some of you can tell me if this is true. I've heard that the severed floor is highly reminiscent of like the back halls of like Mormon churches, and that was a major inspiration. I've never been to a Mormon church, so like I would not know, but that's what I've heard. I've heard that the back walls, that the back rooms with like the paintings and the white walls is it was meant to be kind of reflective of like a Mormon church. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's pretty interesting. But there's certainly this weird sterile feeling that is there, and the show also has this dry humor that's mixed with dread, which, like I said, it gives you this unsettling feeling that it forces you to sit in. So you get these moments that are kind of hilarious, but they're funny in a weird way because it's awkward and it's precise. It's like on the nose with how like real it is, but it's like presented in this weird surreal way. And then 2 minutes later, they'll hit you with something like emotionally devastating. I think a good example of like the unsettling stuff in Severance is Milchick. Milchick is just an unsettling character in general, but that dance party, the office dance experience or whatever it was called, the entire time that he's dancing and he's getting more intense with it, I'm freaked out. Like I am scared. I'm genuinely scared, and I'm like, it's kind of funny, but it's also like, are you gonna start cutting off faces? Like what's? I'm also genuinely like freaked out. I'm like, it's funny but unsettling, And not every show can do that. Not every show can pull off that tone. And it's like, wow, this show nails that tone. It nails it. Um, so it's that balance that really kept me glued, because you never get too comfortable, right? And it lends to just like, I feel like it's I don't know. I want to go home. Anytime they show The Office, I'm like, damn, I want to go home. I want to get out of this sterile environment. Um, the whole show feels, and I guess this is part of the metaphor. The whole show feels kind of weirdly severed and disconnected, and eerie and quietly horrifying. That's the thing too. It's quiet. It's quietly horrifying. Like the corporate world quietly controls you, quietly oppresses you. It's not through like overt aggression, or like it's not through violence. It's a quiet form of control. And that's oh, ooh, it makes me shiver even thinking about it. Let's see what else. One thing too that hit me hard was the idea, just in general, of the innie and the outie versions of yourself being two entirely separate people. Because that's freaky. I would never split myself into two entirely separate people because, oh, God, don't do this. If this is ever a thing in the real world where they're like, oh, this is a good idea, don't do it. Don't do it. Because it's like you go to work and then suddenly you blink and then it's 8 hours later. You don't know what happened. You don't know what you did or how you felt. Like you might feel the physical stress. You might feel the physical stress of the emotional turmoil of the day, but you don't remember. So you're just like stressed for no reason, right? As far as you're concerned. And then for your innie, it's just endless work. So imagine no weekends, no sleep, no freedom. This is still you experiencing this. So you're subconsciously traumatizing yourself. You're subconsciously traumatizing yourself. Like I'm surprised. Yeah, yeah. And it too. I will talk about this in just a second, but it gets more obvious too that what happens on the inside still affects the outside because of Irving's character drawing the back rooms in his outie life. But we'll get to that in a second. But it's just such a terrifying idea, right? And it's really kind of the dream of corporations. This is what they want. They don't want individuality. They want to be able to strip you of everything that you are and come in and work for me and be nothing, just be an extension of this corporation, right? So this is a corporation's like dream, right? But it should be an individual's nightmare. No one should be pushing for this to be real, right? And I think the show does a great job of just showing you how horrible this is. And it's also just a reflection of the real world. That's why yeah, it's yeah. Um, and all the characters have really good arcs, like I mentioned too in this show too. Like Mark has a really gutting arc, in my opinion, because he's trying to escape grief, right? The loss of his wife by severing, by lobotomizing a part of his life, right? He's trying to escape existing just for a little bit. So that's why Mark chooses to sever himself. But the thing is, trauma doesn't just vanish. Like I said, it still seeps through. The innie and the outie are still hurting, and neither one has any tools to deal with it, right? So, literally, he's fragmented, and he's still trying to function as a whole. And right, and this concept of reintegration is really interesting to me because like you have that scene in season 2 where he's having a conversation with his innie, and the innie brings up the point that if they integrate, the outie would become the dominant personality. The innie is just going to be suppressed in this little corner because the outie has more memories, more experience. He's just more of a whole person. These innies are essentially adult children, right? Like with everything stripped away, the memories stripped away on the severed floor. On the severed floor, these innies are the most honest, most earnest, versions of themselves. Like all social context is stripped away. They operate as themselves without inhibition, without societal expectation, without constraints. It's really interesting because you're seeing the most pure form of themselves, but it's also a very, very young, like it's a very young person. So that was a really interesting scene because, of course, the any who's this fully formed individual is concerned about like what he becomes if they integrate. I'm just I'm now this little side part of what you were. It's almost like the innie is saying that if I integrate with you, I'm still going to stop existing. I'm just going to be a part. I'm now a little part of you. So it's either I stop existing and you never come back to the severed floor, or I just become a little part of you. That is also me stumbling on a really good, interesting point. Is that the innies only exist on the severed floor, right? So there's really no option for them. Like it's either reintegration, or you just stay severed forever, or the outing never comes back, and then you're just dead forever, and you never exist. You're just dead basically. So I don't know what the solution is beyond just reintegration, and particularly with the character Helly R, because she is like kind of the bad guy and the good guy at the same time. What does reintegration look like with Helly R? Like, does Helly R just become like suppressed in Helena's mind? Is there a way to just like delete Helena and then just Helly R becomes the dominant personality, which is what I want to happen, honestly, because I hate Helena. But it's all really interesting. I think Helly might be the most important character in terms of shaking up the system. Like, so when she comes in, it's that's what's really funny about like the innies being the outie with everything stripped away, because Helly comes in and she immediately rejects the system. Her outie doesn't reject the system; she perpetuates it. She's a part of it. She's a part of it. But the innie comes in and immediately rejects the situation, which no one else has really dared to do yet. Like, she's the source of the rebellion in essence. So she basically wakes up everyone else. Um, and then once you find out that she's Helena Egan, which, by the way, I mentioned that that's like the best twist ever in season one. When you find out that she's Helena, it's like, holy crap, she's the one behind all of this. That was crazy, 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 crazy good twist. Um, it's just kind of it's just crazy. It's crazy, and it's all kind of been a brand stunt. She's basically just doing it to prove the concept. She's willing to sacrifice like a part of herself and her. Oh, that's just some. No, don't let people mess with your brains and put sci-fi chips and sever your mind. That's just not a good idea. It's so obviously not a good idea. And we mentioned before, like Irving, how he's um, Irving is interesting because he starts off as this loyal to the handbook kind of guy, loyal to the rules, and then you see him slowly unravel because he kind of falls in love, and then it starts to build a real connection, and then it gets taken away from him, and he starts to question everything, and and then also the fact that his Audi is kind of obsessed with Lumen too and trying to figure it all out, and that he's painting those hallways over and over again. It shows you that there is a subconscious connection here, that there is a connection between the innie and the Audi, that Severance is not exact, right? Um, so it was just really interesting to see that character develop over time. And we don't know what's going to happen to him at the end. Big cliffhanger. So also big cliffhanger with Bert and his Audi, right? Because we don't know what Bert's Audi's deal is. Bert's Audi is shady. So that's going to be an interesting thing for season three to maybe explore. Pretty excited about that. Um, let's talk about Dylan. I went back and forth with liking Dylan, hating Dylan. I feel like I'm always going back and forth with liking and hating Dylan, right? So Dylan is kind of a character that just kind of he sneaks up on you, right? He starts off as the comic relief in the show, I think, and he kind of still is the comic relief a little bit, but he gets way more in depth. He's just like I think it's funny too how he's really 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 into all the weird corporate perks because that's all he has. Like the idea of a waffle party is all that he has. The idea of like this weird watermelon melon party is all that he has. So of course he really cherishes all of this weird stuff. But then in the end, like he comes through, he's like the guy that's gonna hold the door open. While like we to give us this chance of getting the message out there, to give us this chance of escaping. So what's interesting about season two is you see um, how season one and season two by the end, you see like how he starts to change, right? Like that reveal that he's got a son and a family. Like he stops. Um, like he's something fundamentally shifts, right? So because before he didn't really know what he was missing, but now he realizes that he's missing something so meaningful, a life with a family and a wife. And those moments where he was talking to this Audi's wife were so good, right? Because he really, really sees what he's missing. And it's almost like he would rather not exist than live knowing what he's lost, essentially. So when he finds out about the family, I think that's the moment that he really, really changes, and it's really interesting to see that character development. Um, and yeah, just really good characterization all around the board in this show for most of the characters, I would say. I think some characters I'm hoping they maybe dive more into in season two, but some of the characters give me the feeling um, that they're kind of characters that exist to set up mystery, but something about certain characters gives me the feeling that there's hollowness and that there's not real substance behind the mystery. So we'll see with some of these more side characters what happens in season two, because there's a lot of stuff that we don't know, a lot of unknowns. But I think hopefully season three gets into more of that. Miss Casey's very interesting. Miss Casey and Gemma, what exactly are they doing with Gemma? None of it's really answered in a satisfying way, if you ask me. So that's something that's up for season two. I really don't have any good theories for it either, and that's why I don't know if you guys remember, but I did think that I was going to do Severance content like weekly, maybe as the show was airing. But because season two had the pace that it had, and it was very like drip, 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 not really revealing anything for the entire season, I I didn't really have anything to add to all of it, right? I didn't really have any theories or speculation, because I just don't think we have enough here to really say what the whole point of it is. And that's why season two is going to be really, 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 season three, I mean, it's going to be really, 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 really important to defining some of these things. Like, what is Lumen actually doing? So a lot of that remains to be seen. What else should I say? I think too, what makes Lumen the company so scary is how big it is. It's a massive corporation. They're everywhere. We see in season two that, typical story where there's this town that cropped up around some Lumen facility, and then when that factory went away, the town kind of dies, and the town has also been poisoned by the facility. Everyone's like coughing. This happens. This is a real thing that has happened in the real world, that happens in America, where the government will just let these corporations poison the earth, poison the environment, poison people, and they just get away with it. And it's just normal. And no one cares. And it's just normalized, and they just have the power to do this, and it's just looked the other way, and it's just whatever. Sure, you can poison this river. Sure, you can poison the soil. Sure, you can poison the air. People here are dying from cancer. You've seen that Julia Roberts movie. What is it called? Erin Brockovich, about the people that got poisoned from the water. It happens. It happens. It happens with literally just releasing toxic waste into water, and then the farmer's like, "Why are my cows dying? My cows are dying because the water is poisoned." I think there's a recent Veritasium video on just poison chemicals that are just released, and it's just like, whoop, sorry, we poisoned the environment. Sorry, we poisoned an entire generation. It's crazy. That's what you should actually be scared of. That type of stuff. It's just scary how normal it is in the real world, and it's scary how normal it is in the Severance world, right? The pastel offices, the friendly voice over the intercom, like the weird incentives. It's all this soft, smiling form of control, as I said, this soft, quiet form of control. There's no spooky, scary monster. There's no like big villain in their traditional sense. It's just a system that quietly erases all autonomy. and shuts up anybody that dissents. The show really captures that power doesn't need to be loud. Power doesn't need to be loud to be terrifying. It doesn't. Quiet power exists, and really, really, most of the time, it just needs to be consistent and impersonal. Really, that's really what it needs most of the time. Yeah, Tuskegee experiment. That's another example. There's countless examples, right? There's countless examples. And it's rarely ever like the government is poisoning people. It's just like the government looking the other way when corporations that have a lot of money poison people. That's what it is most of the time. But yeah, what else about Severance? I think a big part of too with Severance that makes the mystery so cool is the mystery of the other departments and how there's layers and layers added to it. And I'm really hoping that it goes somewhere. Um, but what even is optics and design? What are these other departments? Why are they treated like rival gangs? Um, why does no one know what anybody else does? Why are they all terrified of each other? Right? It's a really obvious, clever metaphor. Really, it really is just like a metonyme. I think would be the word just for compartmentalization. Right? This is just what it is. It's just like a metonyme because it's both in the corporate life and in their own minds. Right? Just in both senses, right? Because it's divide and conquer, right? We got to make the different people that work for each other be more suspicious, that work for us. We got to make the different groups of people that work for us be more suspicious of each other and be more hostile to each other instead of putting that on us. That way we can get away with doing what we're doing. We got to turn them against each other so that we can keep operating in the way that we want, right? It's just another layer of control, right? They want to keep everyone isolated and suspicious so that they'll never unite. And we just talked about Andor. That's what happens in Andor too. Isolate, control the narrative, turn the people against the people so they don't point to like what's actually running everything. So yeah, like I said, season 2 ends with a huge cliffhanger. Um, Gemma's out, Mark S and Helly are in. I have no idea what's going to happen to them. I have no idea what's going to happen to them, but I couldn't be more excited for season 3. And I hope the wait isn't as long. Jesus Christ. I really hope the wait isn't as long. Wow. So yeah, we got some super chats. Jest. Whoa. Jest gifted 50 Quins. 50 memberships? Well, I love how the YouTube thing can't do like the apostrophe in my name, so it's like Quinn, a bunch of symbols, memberships. Thanks so much. That is awesome. Thank you so much. Jess, you were freaking awesome. I didn't even see that. Sorry, I wasn't looking at the chat yet because I was too engrossed in my notes and getting at all my points. But you are amazing. Thank you so much. And thank you for your super chat here as well. See, you left another one. Your content is phenomenal, and I demand you continue for the next 5 years. I look forward to more sci-fi badassery. Well, I'm going to continue as long as possible. Well, thank you so much for your super chats. Let's see if I missed any others that I can get to. Is Kira P on planet Earth? Also, what year is it? I think it is a different version of Earth. I think it's a different version of the Earth that we live in. And I think it's set contemporarily. I think it's just in the modern world, but it's like a weird alternate world. You know what I'm saying? It's not exactly our world. You know, that's why we talk about the novum. There's always something that separates in sci-fi, that separates our world from the world of the book that we're reading or the story that we're watching. Mike Hunt says, on the same topic, 1984 is science fiction. I didn't realize that first because all the technology in the book exists now. Yes, it absolutely is science fiction. It absolutely is science fiction. And yeah, it can be hard. That's an interesting point too, because it can be harder to identify the novum in science fiction, especially when it's older, because you're like, oh, they don't really have anything that screams science fiction by today's standards, but by those standards, it definitely was a novum, right? You know, like older books that, you know, talk about AI getting out of control or like computer, like a lot of that stuff is becoming super real now. Although we don't have actual artificial intelligence, we really have, you know, the large language models that are really blowing up right now. Uh, we don't have actual AI, but this is the closest that we've ever had. So I think the world is really reacting to that in a lot of interesting ways. And I don't know where it's gonna lead. It's curious because it's becoming more incorporated into every single thing. Like I went into Creator Studio on YouTube today, and there's this tab that's like ideas for video, and let me come up with your title. Let me come up with your next video idea, and here's the thumbnail that you can use. And I'm like, geesh, right? Like, what's left for me? Like, you come up with the idea, you come up with the thumbnail. Like, it's like this is what the algorithm wants, and I'm like, is this the future? Like, I don't want this to be the future because I like just kind of stumbling on things, liking it or disliking it, and if I like it, then maybe I'll like cover it on my channel. But it seems like there's the powers that be are really like pushing it, like, oh no, you need to use this. And I'm just like, I really hope that's not the way that everything is going, but it seems it used to be science fiction. It would have been a few years ago like, oh, that's a sci-fi idea, but now it's real. And not only is AI content all over YouTube now, YouTube is definitely encouraging it. YouTube is, I don't know. So it's becoming a thing. It's becoming a thing. And it's not just in the YouTube world. It's not just in the entertainment world. Uh, Large language models are everywhere. They're infiltrating everything and everywhere. So it's going to be an interesting 10 years at this point. It's going to be an interesting 10 years at this point. But, you know, like I've said in the past, I think there's always going to be a place for human art. Um, you know, I think that humans are always going to be. I think that people want things that are made by people, right? I don't know, but who knows? Who knows where things are going? So I exhausted all my Severance notes, and we went through all of the Andor stuff. Both two great shows. If you're into sci-fi and you haven't seen either of those shows, I guess you don't care about spoilers if you've watched this entire thing. Definitely two shows that are worth your time at this point in time. These are adult shows with adult themes. And when I say adult themes, I don't mean like explicit material. I say adult, like grown up themes. Like these are shows that are going to make you think, right? This is sci-fi. This is real science fiction. Like this is continuing the legacy of science fiction that is mature and thoughtful and not just about like boom boom spaceship. You know what I mean? I love it, and I do feel like I hope more shows like this come out in the future. Um, Thank you so much for your super chat. I really like you and your videos. Keep up the great work. Thank you all so much. Thank you all so much for being here. It's fun to do streams. It's fun to do streams because I get to hang out with you, wonderful people. Someone says AI-induced psychosis is a real thing. Try not to outsource your mental health into a language model. That is really, really interesting. Yeah, I mean, you know, I've read a lot about like those language models and how they work and how they can hallucinate and how they can produce, you know, just they can just make stuff up like false information. I know they're getting better all the time, but if you're going to be making use of AI, then you definitely need to be double checking everything, all the information that it's giving you for sure. Um, yeah, I've seen yeah, and there's different forms of AI too. I don't know exactly how curated it all is or how regulated it all is, but I know there's different ones that do different things that have different tones and others that are more limited. But I don't know. I don't know. Someone mentioning Mad Men. I love Mad Men. And Mad Men is a great show. It's not science fiction at all, but it's a great show about just like, I feel like the human condition, right? And there is, and the show takes place over the course of about 10 years, starting in the 1960s. And it's so interesting to see how much things change, right? Like in the beginning, the company is like, promoting cigarettes, the advertising agency, and at the end, the company is advertising against cigarettes, right? So that just shows you how much things have changed. And, there's a whole thing in Mad Men too where they talk about how for the longest time they used art advertisements, right? That people would come in and hand draw things, and that was the big thing. But now they're moving more into television. So, like, the art is becoming irrelevant because now ads are moving to television. So, things always change, stuff always evolves. Humans always develop new things of doing, new ways of doing things, um, new ways develop. There's a really cool episode in Mad Men 2 where they get a new computer, and oh, there's that one character. I forget the character's name, but he's like a younger guy. And it's like this big 1960s computer, and it's huge. It takes up a whole room, and it's making this sound. And I forget his name, but he becomes obsessed with the computer. This could have been like a short story, or like a short like satire book or something. This little arc. He becomes obsessed with the computer, and he's like looking at it, and he's suspicious of this new machine that he thinks is going to like destroy the world, take his job, and do all this stuff. And at the end of it, you realize that this character is going through actual psychosis, that he's having a mental breakdown, but also the episode can be looked at as kind of like his descent into madness because of like because of his anxiety about this new technology that is arising to replace him. God, that's such a good episode, and I can't remember his name for the life of me. There's so many characters in Mad Men. That's definitely a mature adult show that I can't recommend enough, even though it's not science fiction. Someone says, "Happy birthday! I'm gonna watch your latest video and go to bed. Thank you for discussing Severance. I'd love to see long form video essay about the show from you in the future. Let's see how season 3 hits, and then we might get it. Let's see it. Let's see it." Um, so yeah, it is my birthday tomorrow. So I think we're gonna end the stream in just a little bit here. It has been super fun to talk about Andor and Severance. I know this was super late. This is a super late coming. I know Andor aired several weeks ago when Severance aired even longer ago. But yeah, like I said, I've been really just working on my history of science fiction video and just like diving deep into just all forms of science fiction and just really expanding my knowledge and just reading more stuff and just becoming more connected to older works of science fiction and just learning about the history and learning the different ways that different science fiction authors have said things and expressed things throughout the years and how it's evolved over time and how it's just all really freaking interesting. It's just all really good. And I hope that everyone's having a wonderful day. It wasn't the Harry Crane character, it was the other guy that I think he comes in at a later season. But yeah. Thanks everyone for watching. I'm gonna go just relax, have a good day, and I hope everyone here has a wonderful, phenomenal day. Thanks everyone for watching, and it's been phenomenal. Click the like button if you've enjoyed the stream. Definitely watch those 2 shows if you haven't watched them. And like I said in the beginning, anyone that has questions about the Indiegogo project, check out the updates page on the Indiegogo page, and that'll give you all the updates you need. We should have some major updates and should be showing some art next month, so it's all really exciting. I know the project has been held up. It's been a frustrating process, I'm not gonna lie. We've had to discard my main artist, someone that I've worked with for years, because I don't really know what happened. They were no longer interested in continuing the project. They did not communicate, and we couldn't use the art, so we had to restart from scratch at the beginning of this year. But I'm trusting the process, and I'm hoping that we can get it flowing and get it out. And I love the story, and I'm just excited for everyone to see it. And thank you so much for Wikipedia Brown. We mess with you so much, dude. Please keep making content. Thank you. And I mess with you guys too. And yeah, so peace, love, everyone. Treat your neighbor nicely, and be kind. Read a science fiction book. Cuddle up with a good book or a good show. And everyone have phenomenal Friday. And that's all, folks.